We now move to the next item of business, which is the financial state of the church. The chair now recognizes Moses Kumar, the General Secretary of the General Council on Finance and Administration, to provide their report.
Greetings. I'm honored here to be in your role as General Secretary and Treasurer. And I want to thank you for you being here. I think everybody started telling who they are. I'm an Indian. For Homeland Security purpose, I'm a U.S. citizen, in case they have some doubts. Close your eyes for a minute. Close your eyes for a minute. Take a deep breath. Think about what brings you joy. Is it your grandchildren? Maybe, like me, it is ice cream. You are not supposed to eat ice cream. Oops, my wife is listening, is in the room. I meant apples. Apples bring joy. There is a time for everything and every purpose under heaven, including joy. What brings me joy at this moment is that we have more than 30,000 churches worldwide. This is after disaffiliation. 30,000 churches worldwide who are committed to making disciples of Jesus Christ. What a joy it is. This includes lighthouse churches that are communities welcome United Methodist Church, whose churches have closed, including for disaffiliation. In this season, God invited us into a way of doing ministry differently, and our leaders said, yes, new faith communities are being born. There is a time to be born. There is a time to die. Now is our time to do things differently. That is joy. How else God is calling us to do things differently? Worship attendance is declining in the U.S. for all major religions. Our 2020 gave our churches a push into holding churches online. Praise be to God. The Lord challenges us to find new ways to do our work. Many United Methodist churches now have the opportunity to engage in online worship and online giving. There is a time to plant, a time to uproot. There can be joy in the harvest. You can find our financial reports throughout the quadrennium at our website, gcfa.org/reports. The current giving rate, sometimes it is called the collection rate, is 86% in the jurisdictions and 59% in the central conferences. Due to church closures and attendance and using giving rates as a guide, the proposed budget for the next quadrennium is $353 million, which is $250 million reduction from 2016, a 42% reduction overall. The jurisdictional conference's budget is $347 million, a 43% reduction from 2016. The Central Conference's budget would stand at $6 million, a 10% reduction. How can we turn this challenge of reduced budget into an opportunity? I believe God is telling us it is time to do things differently. this overall budget, the work of the connectional table and GCFA has been recommended for a significant reduction. And it's going to make us do things differently. But first, we find joy that by the grace of God, we continue to have financial support. We thank you. We want to thank you. Thank you, delegates, and the people you represent. You faithfully and joyfully give your financial support, your time, your energy, and your prayers. Our annual conferences and local churches also joyfully give despite increasing fixed costs like capital outlay, staffing, and insurance. So due to the fixed or increasing costs facing churches and annual conferences, General Council of Finance and Administration is recommending a base percentage rate in the jurisdiction that has been reduced from 3.29% in 2016 to 2.59%, which is almost 22% decrease. The base rate was decreased in order to leave more funding with local churches and annual conferences who are our front line in making disciples. There is a time to kill and a time to heal. Jesus heals all our wounds, so we must have faith to move forward. So how are we allocating this proposed budget to our 7 apportioned funds? The General Administration Fund overall receives about a 28% reduction. This is due to a 15% increase in the General Conference budget. The increase is mainly because $7 million was added to the Commission on General Conference for a possible 2026 special session. If we remove that increase for the General Conference, the General Administration Fund would be at 47% reduction. These allocations can be found in report number 6. 3 of our major funds, the Ministerial Education Fund, Black College Fund, and African University are proposed for a 47% decrease. Some of you may have been alarmed to see a 72% decrease for the Interdenominational Cooperation Fund. The fund has a large amount of reserves and a capacity to continue their work. There is a time to tear down and a time to build up. Although it may look different, we will continue to build with joy. We know that God is calling us to reimagine our Episcopal Fund, which receives between 13 to 15% reduction under proposed budget. General Council of Finance and Administration remains concerned about the long-term sustainability of the Episcopal Fund. Please note, GCFA is required by the General Conference to fund 71 bishops, which we have done. But fully funding all of them will create a deficit beginning in 2026. The total deficit at the end of 2028 would be between $14 to $20 million if all the Episcopal areas are filled. Given the funding we have, we could sustain only 54 bishops worldwide for the upcoming quadrennium. But reserves will be significantly depleted. And remember, GCFA cannot move dollars between apportioned funds after General Conference approval of the quadrennial funds. Therefore, if there is a deficit, the General Council of Finance and Administration's only obligation to make cuts mid-quadrennium to salaries, housing, or office allowance in the Episcopal budget. Another way to aid the long-term sustainability of the Episcopal Fund is to increase giving by the central conferences. As funding from the jurisdictional conferences is decreasing to church closures and declining attendance rates. Currently, the central conferences provide 14% of funding for the Central Conference Episcopacy. To fund 25 bishops in the Central Conferences, as approved by the General Conference in 2016, the Central Conferences would need to increase their giving to the Episcopal Fund by 255%. This increase would mean that the Central Conference giving would support 41% share of the total cost of episcopacy serving in the Central Conferences. To replace funding currently provided by the jurisdictions, which is no longer available due to reasons I mentioned, the Central Conferences would need to a 91% increase in giving to support what have been, which is 20 bishops. I want to emphasize, GCFA has no authority to control the number of bishops elected. And we don't tell anybody to do what they want. But it is our role to communicate what we can and cannot afford. Budgeting is a delicate dance. We know that any increase to the base rate in order to fund the Episcopal Fund or increase any other fund or programs will negatively affect local churches and annual conferences. Local churches and annual conferences are already financially struggling to meet their own ministry needs. Our other option would be to decrease other funds like our MEF Fund, African University, or the Black College Fund. Or we need to reallocate World Service funds from agencies who are already facing budget cuts of up to 53%, which affects their mission and ministries. Delegates, these are not easy decisions. But we are praying for each of you. There is a time to mourn, a time to dance. Overall, World Service Fund is subject to a 49% reduction. You can find all the allocation in report number 1. How do we continue doing more with less? Our agencies have been answering that question for many years already. The agencies are now working together in shared spaces to reduce cost. And since 2017, the agencies had a 39% reduction in staff. There is a time to cast away stones, a time to gather them together. Going through the allocation to the World Service Fund, the Young Clergy Initiative is complete and is no longer budgeted. During the allocation process, the connection table prioritized several agencies in this budget. The connection table, the Committee on Status and Role of Women, Religion and Race, and the National Ethnic Plans are prioritized in this budget. Each of these groups I just mentioned are recommended for a 1% reduction. United Methodist men is slated for a 41% decrease. Interpretation resources of the United Methodist communication is slated for a 47% decrease. The Central Theological Educational Fund would be reduced by 50%. The largest of our agencies receiving World Service funds are Church and Society, Global Ministries, United Methodist Communications, Discipleship Ministry, and Higher Education. Each one is recommended to receive 53% reduction. Still, these entities are answering God's call how to turn these challenges into opportunities. There is a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Thank you, agencies, for continuing to embrace your ministry and mission with joy. General Council of Finance and Administration is facing a 59% reduction in funding from the General Administration Fund. How is God calling us to do things differently at General Council of Finance and Administration? We are trying something new, innovative, and different in two ways. First, through UMC Support, our ministry brand, and secondly, ministry partners. You can learn about both UMC Support and our ministry partner program at gcfa.org, or you can visit our booth here in the Convention Center. We listen to you. We listen to you and the churches to find out where you need administrative help and develop UMC Support. More than 100 churches, 100 ministries have used our human resources, technology, financial services, and more. We saved the Greater New Jersey Annual Conference $100,000 on their technology services. Praise be to God. This is very important. UMC Support, while offering quality administrative services at a low cost, also helped General Council of Financial to reduce our reliance on apportionment. There is a time to search, a time to give up. GCFA continues to search for new ways to do things with joy and a servant's heart. Second, a ministry partner. General Council of Finance and Administration has built relationship with businesses outside of the connection. We are so grateful to these partners who have been vetted with Church and Society according to our social principle, who provide valuable services to ministries like special discount, worldwide, and alternative revenue streams to fund local churches. In addition to offering discounts to individual United Methodist Church, ministry partner, the Home Depot, has given more than $50,000 this quadrennium to Encore. How joyful is that? This is the time to tear and the time to mend. We mend with joy. In short, agencies including General Council of Finance and Administration are doing more with less. Less budget, less staff. My friend and colleague, General Secretary Roland Fernandez, shared a reality earlier this year with this incredible insight. We are shifting from agencies dictating to churches and annual conferences to agencies listening, inviting, and collaborating with local churches and annual conferences. Thank you, General Secretary Roland, for this important message that we should all remember. There is a time to be silent and a time to speak. Delegates, you're in our prayers. God tells us, There is a time for everything. There is time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. May we go in peace with joyful hearts and obedience, knowing that the Lord is giving us an opportunities disguised as challenges. It is time to trust God. It is time to trust in God. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, General Secretary Moses Kumar, for that report.